Hi everyone, welcome to this paper, They Live in You, Finding My Way in Disney Animation, using the Lion King and Moana films opposite my experiences in the country of my grandparents' birth, which is the Caribbean island of Grenada, to open a conversation on the importance of ancestors and feeling connected. From Mufasa through Simba and Kiara, Disney's saga of Uh, Lion Kings was a hook for thinking about how I learned my family history through oral history testimonies and the necessity for every generation to pass on the family secrets and stories onto the next one. At Easter last year, I went back to Grenada to attend a family reunion for the descendants of Christmas Ventour and Felicity St. John, my maternal my maternal grandfather's grandparents. So Grandad Sarge, who's pictured on the right hand side in the corner there, is one of 11, and he grew up in the village of Granroy in St. John Parish in Grenada. His mother, Sita, came from a village called Borleo in St. George Parish on the island, and the Ventals historically were farmers. So arriving in Granroy at 16 years old, little did Sita know that her name would become local legend in that village. Nearly a century later, there is now a plaque pictured in the bottom left-hand corner there, outside of the family shop. Sita was a farmer and a market trader. She went to market every Saturday to sell produce to the local community, yams, potato, callaloo, banana, and things like that. The village communities in Moana are something I related to in my family history of tight knit communities, markets, families who told stories to each other, and how family history of ancestors is something that is embraced and also passed down as well, culturally speaking. Moana and Moana 2's representations of Polynesia is one interpretation, not not the interpretation. And I'd say if you're going to look into this more deeply, I'd go and look at people who are writing about this, so indigenous writers and so on. And don't take Disney as your education. I know it sounds obvious, but don't do it. Um, but its essence provoked me to think about my family history, or my family of a different culture. In the opening song to Moana, the chief tells Moana it's a place where women weave baskets and fishermen come back from the sea. When I interviewed my cousin Weeks, who is my maternal grandmother's cousin, so he's my cousin. I'm not sure how many times, but he's my cousin as well, and he comes from the same village as my granddad. He said, as a family, we never had a fridge. As a family, we never had a cooker. Everything was organic. So the sea provided the fish and the land provided the food. It was us going out into the field, the allotment, the bush, call it whatever you want to call it. And we just took what was provided, whether it was banana, sweet potato, yam, plantain, you name it. It was there. We came home, prepared it, and we ate it. Things like chicken was killed and prepared. Fish was netted and prepared. As a kid growing up in Northampton, which is a town in the East Midlands, these are in the East Midlands in England, these are things we would never have done. Bearing in mind, we never had any electricity, so everything we ate was with a kerosene lamp. But if you lived there, it would have been normal. So my great grandmother Sita never left Grenada because she never needed to. The land provided the food, and they could get things from the sea and the bush and things like that. So she never, she was a farmer, and that was her role. Um, everything she needed was in that village. Through oral history testimonies, I found out that what my family did before we came to England in the 1960s. Like Moana found out her ancestors were voyagers, I found out my ancestors were farmers, agricultural people, landowners, used to tend things like banana trees and sugarcane. Moana leaves her village in the first film because the land is cursed by the Maori stealing the heart of Tafiti. Um, and they can't grow anything. And for me, this imitates my family's migration story, where many young people left for England in the 50s and 60s. My granddad's brother, Albert, left in 55 during Hurricane Janet, and his siblings, Auntie Rosie in 59, my granddad Sarge in 60, and then Auntie Kay in 67. Also Auntie Betts as well, also I think 56. There was a curse upon the Caribbean, and its name was the British Empire, and its legacy. In migrating to Britain, the descendants of those who came have forgotten the land science and have forgotten who we are, myself included. Although that farming is in some cases a result of the slave trade. Pre-colonial African societies show a learned people who knew how to tend land and grow things. The spirits of my forebears are in all histories, and also in the photographs. So in some ways, I feel like Moana does when she speaks with her grandmother, spirit. At a family reunion, my cousin um, my cousin was drumming on the family land in the bush, where there are a lot of family graves going back 100 years. I felt the spirits rising, part of what Carolyn Cooper calls noises in the blood, and scholar dancer L'Antoinette Stines refers to as ancestral data. In Ryan Coogler one of the characters, Annie, tells viewers there are legends of people with the gift of making music so true it can pierce the veil between life and death. Moana uses drums in the first film to conjure spirits, and then in my family culture, calypso music and reggae music, which is African origin, is also a connection to spirit. Certainly, roots reggae in the 70s for many black young people in Britain spoke of stolen African identities, and these musicians acted as griots, preservers of ancestral knowledge, telling people generations removed about colonialism, enslavement, and their origins in Africa. Roots reggae musicians sang songs of revolution and mashing up the system that pressed the world over, Babylon, and offered hope to people in times of crisis, from Bob Marley and the Wailers to Burning Spear, Peter Tosh, Aswad, Steel Pulse, the Abyssinians, and a long list of largely Rastaman brought political messages like this to an international stage. Much of it also pushed through live sound system events as well. It was intergenerational storytelling and kept everyone's sanity, and it was a cultural lifeline. In an Instagram live, doula anthropologist Anna Horn reflected how the film Mufasa commentates on the importance of intergenerational storytelling. It's vital that adults sit at the kids' table, telling stories and interacting with the next generation. This is also how I learned my history of farming about my great-grandparents, through relatives telling stories and showing us photographs. For people whose grandparents died before they were born, this history can be like chasing shadows. But storytelling is how many Black people learn their history wherever we are, wherever we may be in the world. Um, Photos are a privilege. As Anna Horn further says, growing up in America, in the country, we would get really bad thunderstorms, the wind blows and the power goes out. But I would love those moments because it meant that we had no TV, we had no lights. And I remember that my aunt would bring candles, the kerosene, and we would sit in the living room and just tell stories. I had some master storytellers in my family. I can't do it justice. That you could just sit down and just listen. The Nobels were a big family. And before Toyley and Benmark, my great grandparents came to England. They earned their money through farming, and the local people supported them. It was a village community. They all helped one another. As children, my grandmother and company lived in harmony, and children were left to roam, play. So they had play-based childhoods. My grandmother went to school in Granroy from the age of 5 to the age of 9. She came to Northampton in 62, and the Noels were farmers. So her father, my great grandfather, Benmark, had arrived in England in 1960 and sent for them to come. The Ventours and the Noels were from the same village, farmers, and everyone knew each other's families, children, and so forth. Watching films like Moana and Moana 2 and the Lion King saga, I'm haunted by that history, each generation watching over the next. I grew up hearing stories about Grenada, great grandparents, cousins, slave rebellions, coups, and stories of a village that felt mythic. My mum would tell me about stories that she was told by cousins when she was a child going to Grenada as well, about legless people who could walk like giants. But in being told stories, I'm called back to the Caribbean, of a place I do not know. Last Easter, I met many people I was told about in stories, like ghosts, like growing up baptized by bereavement due to the invisible hand of displacement. So what lies beyond, says Moana, I don't know. But I also know that in watching Moana, I see the spirits of the ancestors, my ancestors. In 2017, my mum's sister, Aunt Lou, died to an autoimmune disease called scleroderma, but I know she is still here. She was only 42, but in her, there sits Moana's grandmother and her stories. I'll, I'll always be right beside you, Um, says Moana's grandmother Tala, but perhaps you're meant for more. Being connected to ancestors is being connected to one's family beyond the grave, together but apart. Toni Morrison and Alice Walker have also talked about the importance of being connected with ancestors, where Morrison says to kill the ancestors to kill yourself. Yet, it often feels that to believe in ghosts in the West is a punishable offence. You are believing in something that something felt and unobservable in the literal sense. I'll end with Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. Just as Moana's themes of ancestry, the second Lion King film also follows that trajectory of showing the importance of continuing the stories that started before us. Our ancestors live inside of us. In going back to Grenada, I found people who shared the same looks as me, to the point where we also walk the same. It was very creepy after nearly 30 years, where having grown up separate from most of my family, to find we share so much as well. The end of Simba's Pride ends with Kiara saying, "We are one," where for me, ideas of past, present, and future are not distinct but converge on one another. I'm one with the ancestors, my great grandparents who have died, but I'm also one with the descendants yet to come. For so many of us, we are disconnected from the past. In doing that research, you may begin to learn that you do things the way you do, um, and your interests and the things that you're interested in. You're not the first in your bloodline to do that. Power ballads, including "We Are One" and "He Lives in You," are literally about ancestors and the power of those spiritual connections. Hear the words and have faith. Our ancestors are part of us, and we are part of them. Together still, as they said in Moana 2, just a little different. And as always, if you have comments and questions, leave them in the comments or send me to them email, tradeventour.com/contact.